The biting wind whipped through the narrow alleyways of Oakhaven, carrying with it the scent of brine and decay. Elias, clutching a worn leather portfolio, hurried along, his thin frame shivering despite the threadbare coat he wore. Tonight was the night. Tonight, the prestigious Blackwood Academy of Art announced the recipient of the coveted Blackwood Fellowship, a full scholarship, a guaranteed studio space, and the patronage of the city's most influential art collectors. Elias, after years of tireless work, of sketching by candlelight in his cramped attic room, of enduring his family's constant ridicule, believed, dared to hope, that his name would be called his family. The thought soured the meager warmth he'd managed to conjure. His older brother Theron, a hulking brute with a disdain for anything that couldn't be measured in coin, had openly mocked Elias's artistic aspirations. His sister Seraphina, beautiful and calculating, saw Elias's passion as a weakness, an embarrassment to their family's reputation, and his father, a stern, unyielding businessman, viewed art as a frivolous waste of time, a hobby for the idle rich, certainly not a profession for a son who should be following in his footsteps, managing the family's shipping empire. He had told them he wouldn't be home for dinner. Lied, actually. He knew they wouldn't attend the ceremony, wouldn't acknowledge the significance of the evening. Theron would be at the docks, brokering deals. Seraphina would be at some society ball, angling for a wealthy husband, and his father would be locked away in his study, counting his profits. He imagined their sneers, their dismissive waves if he had dared to invite them. He was better off alone, or so he told himself. The grand hall of the Blackwood Academy shimmered with candlelight. The air buzzed with anticipation. Elias, feeling hopelessly out of place in his patched-up clothes, found a spot near the back, his heart pounding against his ribs. He recognized some of the attendees, renowned sculptors, celebrated painters, wealthy patrons dripping in jewels. They looked at him, if they looked at him at all, with polite indifference or veiled amusement. He felt like an intruder, a trespasser in a world he desperately wanted to belong to. The headmaster, a portly man with a booming voice, took to the podium. He spoke of the importance of art, of its power to inspire and transform, of the Blackwood Fellowship as a beacon of hope for aspiring artists. Elias listened intently, his hands clammy, his breath catching in his throat. The headmaster began to announce the finalists. Each name was met with polite applause. Elias's name was not among them. Disappointment, sharp and bitter, pierced through him. He tried to tell himself it didn't matter, that the experience was enough, that he would keep working, keep creating. But the hope, the fragile, hard-won hope, was slowly dying within him. Then the headmaster paused, a dramatic flourish in his voice, and finally he announced, the recipient of the Blackwood Fellowship, whose unique vision and extraordinary talent have captivated the judges, Elias Thorne. A wave of disbelief washed over Elias. He blinked, convinced he had misheard. The hall erupted in applause. People turned to look at him, their faces now filled with curiosity and perhaps a hint of respect. He stumbled forward, his legs shaky, his mind reeling. As he approached the podium, a figure emerged from the crowd. It was Master Thorne, his father. But instead of the usual stern disapproval, there was a strange look on his face, a mixture of surprise and something akin to pride. Elias, he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. I didn't realize. Before his father could finish, Seraphina appeared, her face flushed, her eyes gleaming. Elias, darling, we're so proud of you. She threw her arms around him, her embrace feeling strangely hollow. Theron pushed his way through the crowd, his massive frame intimidating. He clapped Elias on the back, nearly knocking him off his feet. Well, little brother, he boomed, looks like you finally did something worthwhile. Elias felt a surge of anger. This was all a show. They didn't care about his art. They cared about the prestige, the social standing that came with it. They wanted to bask in his success, to claim him as their own, now that he was no longer a source of embarrassment. He looked around at the faces of his family, their smiles strained, their motives transparent. Then he saw her, an old woman, her face etched with wrinkles, her eyes sparkling with warmth. She stood near the back, a small, knowing smile on her lips. Mrs. Hawthorne, the elderly baker, who lived across the alley from his attic room. She had always encouraged him, slipped him extra bread when she knew he was hungry, and listened patiently to his dreams, his frustrations. And next to her, a young boy, no older than 10, clutching a charcoal sketch that Elias had given him months ago. His eyes were wide with admiration, his face beaming with pride. In that moment, Elias knew where he belonged. He turned away from his family, their insincere congratulations fading into the background. He walked towards Mrs. Hawthorne and the young boy, a genuine smile finally spreading across his face. He had found his recognition, not in the halls of the wealthy and powerful, but in the simple, heartfelt support of those who truly believed in him. Resumo temático. Uma pessoa menosprezada pela família em momento de conquista encontra apoio e reconhecimento em figuras inesperadas, revertendo a sensação de solidão em celebração comunitária. He knelt, placing a hand on the young boy's shoulder. This means more to me than anything, he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. He looked at Mrs. Hawthorne, her eyes radiating a kindness he rarely encountered. Thank you for everything. The headmaster cleared his throat, a subtle reminder of the waiting crowd. Elias reluctantly rose but didn't turn back towards the stage. Excuse me, he said, his voice carrying surprisingly well through the hall. Before I accept this fellowship, I have something to say. He paused, gathering his courage. All eyes were on him now, a mixture of curiosity and impatience. Even his family seemed momentarily stunned into silence. For years, he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, I've poured my heart and soul into my art. It's been my refuge, my passion, my everything, but it hasn't been easy. My family, they haven't always understood. He glanced at his father, whose face was now a mask of displeasure. They saw my dreams as foolish, as a waste of time. They wanted me to be someone I wasn't. A murmur rippled through the audience. Some looked uncomfortable, others intrigued. Elias continued, his voice gaining strength. Tonight they're here celebrating my success, but their congratulations feel hollow. They didn't see my struggle, my sacrifices. They didn't share my vision. They only see the prize. He took a deep breath. This fellowship, it's an incredible opportunity, but it's not worth sacrificing my integrity, my truth. I cannot accept an award that comes with the expectation that I'll suddenly become someone else, someone my family approves of. A gasp went through the crowd. The headmaster looked apoplectic. Theron took a step forward, his fists clenched. Seraphina's perfectly painted smile faltered. Therefore, Elias announced, his voice ringing with conviction, I must respectfully decline the Blackwood Fellowship. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Then a single clap, followed by another and another, until the hall erupted in thunderous applause. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause from before. This was different. This was a genuine outpouring of support, of admiration for his courage, his honesty. He looked at Mrs. Hawthorne, her eyes shining with tears. The young boy beamed, clutching his sketch even tighter. These were his people. These were the ones who mattered. The headmaster, recovering from his shock, sputtered, But the conditions, the studio. Elias smiled. I'll find my own studio. I'll create my own opportunities. I don't need your patronage or my family's approval to be an artist. I only need my passion, my vision, and the support of those who truly believe in me. He turned back to Mrs. Hawthorne and the boy. Let's go home, he said, his heart lighter than it had been in years. I think I have some celebrating to do. As they walked out of the grand hall, leaving behind the stunned silence and the glittering chandeliers, a figure detached himself from the crowd, a woman dressed in simple but elegant clothes, with kind eyes and a warm smile. She caught up to Elias, extending a hand. Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice gentle, my name is Eleanor Ainsworth. I'm a collector, and I was deeply moved by your words. I admire your talent, but even more, I admire your integrity. I would be honored to offer you a different kind of fellowship. No strings attached, just the opportunity to create, to express your vision without compromise. Elias stared at her, stunned. Another opportunity, born not of obligation or expectation, but of genuine respect. A new path opening up before him, leading to a future he could never have imagined. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Miss Ainsworth, he said, I would be honored. Resumo temático. Uma pessoa menosprezada pela família em momento de conquista encontra apoio e reconhecimento em figuras inesperadas, revertendo a sensação de solidão em celebração comunitária. Their fellowship, Elias repeated, almost breathless. He glanced at Mrs. Hawthorne and the boy, a silent question in his eyes. Mrs. Hawthorne nodded, her smile encouraging. The boy, emboldened by the moment, tugged at Elias's sleeve, whispering, You deserve it, Mr. Thorne, you really do. Eleanor Ainsworth's eyes held a sincerity that resonated deep within him. He had spent so long seeking validation, fighting for a place in a world that seemed determined to reject him. Now it was being offered, not as a prize to be won, but as an invitation to create, to be himself. What kind of opportunity are you thinking of, Miss Ainsworth? He asked, his voice still tinged with disbelief. Call me Eleanor, she replied, her smile widening. I have a small gallery in the Arts District dedicated to showcasing emerging artists. I've been looking for someone with your unique vision, your raw talent, someone who paints not just with their hands, but with their soul. She paused, her gaze sweeping over him. I'd like to offer you a solo exhibition, Mr. Thorne, a chance to present your work to a wider audience, without any interference, any demands, just the freedom to create and the support to make it happen. Elias's mind raced. A solo exhibition. It was more than he had ever dared to dream. He looked back at his family, who were now engaged in a heated discussion with the headmaster, their faces flushed with anger and embarrassment. He knew what they were saying, what they were thinking, that he had thrown away a golden opportunity, that he had embarrassed them in front of the city's elite. He turned back to Eleanor, his decision made. Eleanor, he said, his voice firm, I accept. I would be honored. Mrs. Hawthorne squeezed his hand, her touch surprisingly strong. I knew you would, Elias. You always had it in you. The young boy, whose name Elias suddenly remembered was Samuel, jumped up and down, clapping his hands. As they walked away, leaving the academy behind, Elias felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was no longer defined by his family's expectations, by the approval of the art world establishment. He was free. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Eleanor proved to be a true patron, providing Elias with a studio space, art supplies, and unwavering support. She introduced him to other artists, collectors and critics, all of whom were captivated by his talent and his story. He worked tirelessly, pouring all his pent-up emotions, his years of frustration and loneliness into his canvases. He painted the alleyways of Oakhaven, the faces of the forgotten, the beauty he found in the mundane. He painted his truth. The opening night of his exhibition was a resounding success. The gallery was packed with people, all eager to see the work of the artist who had dared to defy the Blackwood Academy. Elias stood in a corner watching the crowd, a sense of quiet satisfaction washing over him. He saw Eleanor beaming with pride, introducing his work to a prominent art critic. He saw Mrs. Hawthorne, her eyes twinkling, accepting compliments from strangers. He saw Samuel proudly showing off his charcoal sketch to anyone who would listen. And then he saw them, his family. Theron, looking uncomfortable in a suit, stood awkwardly by the entrance. Serafina, her face carefully composed, sipped champagne and chatted with a wealthy-looking man, and his father, his expression unreadable, stood silently in the back, his eyes fixed on Elias. Elias felt a flicker of his old resentment. What were they doing here? Were they finally ready to acknowledge his talent, or were they simply there to salvage their reputation? Theron approached him first, his face softening slightly. Elias, he said, his voice low, I have to admit I was wrong about you. Your work, it's actually pretty good. Serafina followed, her smile carefully practiced. Elias, darling, we're so happy for you. We always knew you had it in you. But it was his father's words that truly surprised him. He walked up to Elias, his eyes filled with a mixture of regret and admiration. Elias, he said, his voice rough with emotion, I've been a fool. I didn't understand you, your passion. I was so focused on my own ambitions that I failed to see your talent. I'm proud of you, son. Elias stared at his father, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. This was the moment he had longed for, the validation he had craved. But as he looked into his father's eyes, he realized something. He didn't need their approval anymore. He had found his own path, his own community, his own success. He smiled, a genuine, forgiving smile. Thank you, father, he said. That means a lot. He turned back to the crowd, to Eleanor, to Mrs. Hawthorne, to Samuel, to his new family. He had finally found his place, not in the shadow of his family's expectations, but in the light of his own talent, his own vision, and the unwavering support of those who truly believed in him. The feeling of loneliness had completely vanished, replaced by a warmth and belonging he had never known. Resumo temático. Uma pessoa menosprezada pela família em momento de conquista encontra apoio e reconhecimento em figuras inesperadas, revertendo a sensação de solidão em celebração comunitária. The hum of conversation swelled around him, a pleasant counterpoint to the anxieties that still lingered. He watched Samuel, a miniature version of himself in spirit, excitedly explain the nuances of one of his paintings to a kind-faced woman with silver hair. He saw the pride radiating from Mrs. Hawthorne, a silent testament to their shared history, their shared belief, and he saw Eleanor orchestrating the evening with effortless grace, a true champion of his work. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Eleanor approached him, her eyes sparkling. Well, Mr. Thorne, she said, her voice filled with warmth, it seems you've become the talk of the town. Offers are already pouring in. Elias shrugged, a self-deprecating smile playing on his lips. I just painted what I saw, what I felt, and that's what makes it so powerful, Eleanor countered. People connect with honesty, with authenticity. Don't ever lose that, Elias. As Eleanor moved away to speak with a potential buyer, Elias felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see his father standing there, his gaze surprisingly gentle. Elias, he began, his voice hesitant want. I wanted to apologize for everything, for not understanding you, for not supporting you. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Elias studied his father's face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all he saw was regret, a genuine remorse that touched him despite himself. It's okay, father, he said softly. It's in the past. His father reached out and placed a hand on Elias's arm, a rare gesture of affection. No, it's not okay. I want to make amends. I want to be a part of your life, to support your art, if you'll let me. Elias hesitated. Could he truly forgive his father? Could he trust him? He looked at the faces of his new community, at the unwavering support they had shown him. He knew that he didn't need his father's approval to be happy, to be successful, but perhaps, just perhaps, his father deserved a second chance. There's something I need to show you, father, Elias said, his voice barely a whisper. He led his father through the crowd, past the admiring glances and the hushed whispers, to a small painting tucked away in a corner of the gallery. It was a portrait of his mother. He had painted it from memory, capturing her gentle smile, her kind eyes, the warmth that had always radiated from her. He had never shown it to anyone before. It was too personal, too precious. His father stared at the painting, his eyes filling with tears. He reached out and touched the canvas, his hand trembling. She would have been so proud of you, Elias, he said, his voice choked with emotion. She always knew you were special. A wave of grief washed over Elias, a sudden, overwhelming sense of loss. He realized that all he had ever wanted was his parents' love, their acceptance, and now finally he had it. But his mother wasn't here to share it with him. As he stood there, his father's hand on his shoulder, a realization dawned on him. He had spent so long seeking validation from his family, from the outside world, but true validation came from within. It came from pursuing his passion, from staying true to himself, from surrounding himself with people who loved and supported him. He looked at his father, at the tears streaming down his face. He knew that their relationship would never be the same, but perhaps, with time, with forgiveness, they could build something new, something stronger. Then a voice cut through the emotional atmosphere. Elias Thorne, a stern-looking woman with short grey hair, strode towards them. I am Agent Davies, from the National Art Theft Division. We need to speak with you regarding the provenance of several pieces displayed here this evening. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. Art theft? Provenance? What was happening? His father's grip tightened on his shoulder, a silent question in his eyes. The community he had so carefully cultivated, the success he had finally achieved, felt suddenly precarious, threatened by an unseen force. The celebration seemed to freeze around him, the music fading into a distant hum. The threat of being less than his family expected had passed, but now a new threat, one he could have never imagined, loomed large.